Good afternoon. My name is Chris Konetsky, and I'm the group publisher of Business Publications Corporations, which produces Business Record and DSM Magazine. I want to welcome you to our annual Iowa Stops Hunger event presented by Hy-Vee. When we started Iowa Stops Hunger several years ago, our objective was to highlight food insecurity in Iowa, showcase the important work being done by individuals and organizations across the state, and to inspire action. We do this through regular coverage in our products. We do a special edition of the Business Record, videos, a special magazine, website, social media, and an initiative to help engage corporations in helping solve hunger in our state. Today, we're adding an element into this, into our Iowa Stops Hunger to help take a look and look at some of the individuals that are working each and every day, finding innovative solutions to help find ways to solve hunger. Before we introduce you to our honorees and our panelists today, I want to thank the sponsors that give us the opportunity to help elevate the conversation in the community. Before we hear from Hy-Vee, we're going to roll a video from Hy-Vee, which highlights just some of the ways that Hy-Vee is working to help end hunger.
I think everyone knows us as a company that sells food. We don't want anyone to go hungry, ever. Our commitment to feeding people on the other side of the world and in our own backyards pushed us to set a goal to provide 100 million meals and to fill up the food banks across our communities. Last year, Hy-Vee donated a little over $57 million, and we'll do it again. I promise you that. Not because we can, but because we should. I think everyone knows us.
All right. With us today, we have to help support Iowa Stops Hunger is Ashley Skokin. She's the communications manager at Hy-Vee. Ashley, welcome, and thanks for helping support this effort.
Thank you, Chris. Hy-Vee has been a proud sponsor of the Iowa Stops Hunger initiative since 2020, and we are honored to be part of today's event as we continue to raise awareness around hunger in Iowa and recognize those who have been making a positive impact in our communities. As a grocer for more than 94 years, we have a long-standing commitment to fighting hunger, which continues to be a crisis in many of the communities we serve. Since 2023, we have been supporting local food banks through Hy-Vee's ongoing 100 Million Meals Challenge, working with customers, employees, suppliers, and media partners to provide meals for families in need. I am proud to announce that through this ongoing campaign, we have raised more than 81 million meals to date, and we're expected to reach the 100 million meal goal by the end of this year. Additionally, this month at Hy-Vee, we're celebrating National Family Meals Month, an initiative that focuses on bringing more families together around the dinner table. Through this campaign, we're also highlighting some of the most needed items by food banks as more families turn to those organizations for their next meal. I want to thank the Business Publications Corporation and all of the organizations and speakers here today for their work around food insecurity. By working together, we can make an even greater difference in the lives of others. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashley, and thank you to Hy-Vee for helping power this initiative. I want to take a moment now to thank our premium supporting sponsor, Mom's Meals. Taking care of others is where, as if they are part of their own family, Mom's Meals serves the unique needs of their clients, providing accessible, healthy nutrition delivered right to their door. Check out this quick video from Mom's Meals, and then we're going to hear from Emily Kamish.
I was born 77 years ago, and this house really has a history to it because my mom and dad bought it when he came back from World War II, and I came here with them when I was 3 years old, so a lot of history here. And now I have a lot of issues walking and losing my balance and falling, and just there's so many things. But Mom's Meals is one of the wonderful parts of my program because I am not able to do a lot of cooking and things, and if I didn't have this, oh my goodness, I'm so grateful for the way that these are provided. I tell people I have a very young mind, but my body won't cooperate with me, so I'm extremely grateful for Mom's Meals because I'm very arthritic and I can't hold on to things, so I can't chop anymore, and I love fresh everything. Mom's Meals provides me with such a wonderful variety, and I get to choose from a menu. I mean, this is incredible.
Please welcome Emily Kamish. She's the communications director at Mom's Meals. Emily, welcome.
Hi, Chris. And thank you to the Business Publication Corporation and everyone joining this call for support and commitment to eradicating hunger in Iowa. 25 years ago, Mom's Meals started in a small Iowa community, working with local community-based organizations to deliver meals under the Aging and Disabilities Waiver. Today, we are even more committed to our mission of improving life through better nutrition at home. As the nation's leading provider of medically tailored and refrigerated home-delivered meals, we deliver more than 1.2 million meals every week across zip codes throughout Iowa and the rest of the country. We are honored to be a part of Iowa Stops Hunger and want to continue to elevate our community-based organizations and local food banks to ensure funding and support continue to aid their ability to address hunger and food access issues for everyday Iowans. With all of us working together, collaborating, and developing practical and sustainable solutions to combat hunger, we can make a difference in the health and well-being of some of our most valuable communities.
Thank you, Emily, and thanks to Mom's Meals and also to Hy-Vee. The partnership with both organizations really helps us be able to do the things that we're able to do to help raise awareness around Iowa Stops Hunger. So we want to thank both of them for their support. All right, to continue today's conversation and introduce our panel of hunger heroes, please welcome Michael Moraine. He's the editor of DSM Magazine. He helped work with our team to help put together our Iowa Stops Hunger coverage and to pick out the folks that we are helping bring to you today. And today we've got an opportunity to bring those folks to life. So Michael, welcome, and go ahead and take it away.
Thank you, Chris. And good morning, everybody. I've been looking forward to this. As a reporter and an editor, any chance I get to talk with experts and pick their brains is always a good day in my book. So thank you for joining us. Before we jump in there, we're always looking for ways to make our information and our stories more accessible. So if you poke around the bottom of your screen there, you may see a new icon button down by the mute and camera buttons. You can turn on automatic captioning. So if you would like to read along with the discussion, we are trying out this new tool, and I hope it is useful for those who would like it. So experiment a little bit. It functions a little bit like the chat, which by now, in 2024, you may be familiar with all of the Zoom bells and whistles, but the chat is there available. And we will keep this a lively discussion. Just to get the chat, just to do a practice round in the chat, I'm going to toss out a question and go ahead and weigh in the chat. Just tell us your name and why you're tuning in today. What's one thing you would like to learn about food insecurity? We won't cover everything, but that'll at least make sure that we know that the chat is functioning. And then we have a whole team working behind the scenes. So if you have questions or insights during this next hour, feel free to jot them in the chat, and we will do our best to funnel your questions to our panelists. So go ahead and chime in the chat when you are ready, and we have people standing by to help. So enough housekeeping, enough preamble. One reason that I'm really excited for this event, for this virtual discussion, so many times when we publish a story, it's great on its own, but here's a chance for the voices and the people in the stories to come to life. So at this point, I'm going to introduce the panelists, and they were nominated by peers and coworkers and people who know them. And I'll tell you, this is a very Iowan Midwestern thing. In our promotional materials, we asked for nominations for Hunger Heroes, people who are working to fight food insecurity, and our editorial team, including our assistant editor, Haley Evans, who guided this annual publication. We poured over the nominations, and we singled out these particular individuals for their work combating hunger. But when I called each of them with the good news, each one, typical hardworking Iowan, deflected that credit to their teams. Each one of them works with a team, and the first thing they said, "Sure, thank you for the honor, but this is the work of a bigger organization." Even so, the four panelists who are joining us today know what they're talking about, and they work day in and day out to help feed more people in Iowa and way beyond Iowa. So I'm looking forward to this discussion. So we'll start with a round robin, and I want to give each of them a chance to talk about their work, and then we'll move on to some bigger picture general questions. So let's start with Andy Bales, who is the Executive Director of Children and Families Urban Movement. And that group's mission is to, quote, create a community that supports the potential of children, youth, and families through educational success, healthy living, and community engagement. One way that they do that is through the Breakfast Club at Mullen Elementary School. So let's just start in there. It's a new school year. Andy, tell us about that Breakfast Club at Mullen.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. I'm honored to be alongside these hunger heroes and humbled by being selected. I'm just back from LA, where I worked on Skid Row for many years and fed millions of meals. And now we're just doing something humble in Des Moines. We're across the street from Mullen. So at what is Trinity Las Americas Church, we invite parents to drop off their kids early at Trinity, and then we feed breakfast there, and then we walk the kids across the street for school to start. But every morning we have a big range of kids, so it could be as low as 10 to 30 to even higher during the summer. I think we had a high of perhaps 60 kids coming, and they eat a great meal. I wanted to thank Kevin for the help with the eggs, because my redheaded granddaughter, who eats about 5 eggs anytime she's at grandma's house, would have loved our breakfasts at Mullen, because we have eggs and everything. And so the kids eat a hearty breakfast, and they're much sharper when they go to school and ready to learn. And they cross the street in a really great way. I love to get there early and watch the kids cross the street, and they go have a great day. And then after school, we meet them for education from 2:35 now to 5:30, and their parents pick them up. But we also have a supper club after school for anybody. So it's not just kids, but any hungry adults can come by and eat a supper club at our CFM site, which is at Trinity Las Americas. And I sat with a fellow the other night, and he just thanked me not only for the food, but the community. So every night, every morning, Monday through Friday, we have breakfast and supper, and it's invitation, and we've had up to 125, 150 a night in our supper club. And this particular fella is without a home, absolutely no fault of his own, no struggle with drugs or addiction. His spouse is in long-term care, and he's been left without a home, and he's older like me, and he struggles every day. And he told me, he said, without you, I'd be hungry, and I still get hungry. And I told him, anytime you're hungry, stop by. I'll take you to lunch, because I can't bear to think about another human being struggling with hunger. So that's mostly what we do. We're also gearing up for a big Thanksgiving dinner, and we're going to do a culturally appropriate choices from Africa and choices from Latin America and choices from America, our traditional Thanksgiving. And we do food boxes. So anytime anybody comes in for supper club, they can go over to our shelves and get produce given to us by area farmers, Capital City Market, Hy-Vee. They get a great selection of bread from Hy-Vee and so many others. So we are not just a feeding site, we're also a bit of a food site. So families can take things home and enjoy a dinner.
Andy, how did your experience in Los Angeles, in downtown Los Angeles, inform what you do here in Des Moines? Are there lessons that you apply here?
Yes, I've always known that even making a difference in a small area can catch on and motivate others to join in. And I've had several wonderful, almost miraculous experiences in my life where when you begin to do something little, it grows and becomes big and gets modeled around the country and makes a difference. And so that's what happened at Union Rescue Mission. We exploded as we tried to meet the need of overwhelming homelessness in LA. And that's what I hope happens here. We're starting with Mullen, but we're also going to go to area Northside elementaries in Des Moines and come alongside them with a breakfast club and supper club and hopefully educational opportunities as well. And we hope this movement, we call it, grows to make sure there's not one child in north side of Des Moines going hungry and hurting their educational possibilities and potential.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Thank you, Andy, for your good work and for sharing a little bit about your story. Stay tuned. We're going to move on to the next panelist. Anna, you're up. And I think what Andy said, as far as I understand, applies to your story, where sometimes you start with a little project and it scales up, or you can replicate it with other projects, and it sometimes there's a lot of momentum. Will you, Anna, I was ready to just dive in with questions, but for everybody else, you should know that Anna Mullen is the Senior Manager of Digital Marketing for FoodCorps, a nonprofit organization that partners with schools and communities to nourish kids' health, education, sense of belonging by providing meals, food education, and experiences that contribute to overall health and well-being. So good stuff, big goals. What should folks know about FoodCorps? The mission is great big. What do you want people to know specifically about FoodCorps?
Yeah, thanks, Michael, and hi, everyone. I'm Anna. Really nice to be here with you. And I also just want to say thanks to the Business Publications Corporation, Hy-Vee and Mom's Meals. This is really an honor. And I laughed, Michael, at your comment about how shy we all are about the individual recognition for what is really community and cooperative work among many people. So FoodCorps is my current employer, and I feel really lucky to have been in nonprofit food systems work for over a decade and to really see this from a lot of angles, including, I love Andy's story about direct work in schools, and that's part of what FoodCorps does. We are a grantee of the AmeriCorps program, so we have almost 200 Corps members who serve in 18 states and 200 communities, including Des Moines Public Schools and in Waterloo. Those are two of our Iowa sites. And those Corps members are with kids in schools day in and day out, feeding them nourishing meals, getting them excited about where their food comes from, like doing school gardening activities with them or taste tests, getting them to try new foods. Also spending time with families to help bring recipes home, getting families excited about food in their communities too, and trying to do all of that with the lens of culturally affirming experiences around food. So that's one big part of our work, and we build on that work, recognizing that we need policy change so that this kind of activity is available to every kid across the country. So policy advocacy, both at the school board level, the state level, and the federal level, are places that FoodCorps works. We also work to build networks of change makers who believe in this cause of nourishing every kid across the country to make that work happen. And we develop leaders that can really be in service of the health and well-being of every child. So it's really our vision that by 2030, every child in Iowa and across the country has access to food education and nourishing food in schools. So our big initiative right now is really around school meals for all, which means that every kid, regardless of their family circumstances, their financial income, is able to eat at school, and that those foods that they eat be nourishing and support their learning and their development into young adults who can give back to their communities too. That's an initiative that we are tracking policies across the country on. There are 8 states who have passed that. So 8 states right now have kids who don't have to worry about paying for their school meals or being shamed if they can't pay for their school meal. And we are trying to advocate that that should be the case for every kid. And so knowing that it's the both and, we have immediate needs right now of kids and families who need to be fed. The work of serving breakfast that Andy's doing is so important. And we believe that systemic change is needed so that this isn't a question mark of where the next meal is coming from.
One of the elements of your nomination that really stood out to our editorial team was that you have worked with lots of different organizations that have both small, specific focus, but connect to a bigger organization. So you and your church have raised money and worked through Heifer International. You worked with Catholic Social Workers House in Kansas City. You've worked with the World Food Prize. So what I thought was really interesting was you have very hands-on experience with specific projects, but you're also well-versed in policy and sort of taking a step back and looking at ways that we can sort of think about the challenges long-term or sort of big picture. What drew you to this cause in the first place, to combating hunger?
Yeah, that's a great question. I ask myself that a lot. And I was thinking about Parker Palmer, who is a poet and a philosopher, has written a book called Let Your Life Speak. And I read it in college. And he sort of has this call to finding your vocation, which is where your greatest passion meets the world's greatest need. And I feel lucky to have identified, and I think it's in part because the way I grew up in my family and that meals were really important to us, that for me, like my vocation is really around food and feeding people, and really a deeply held belief and value that food is a fundamental human right and that no one should be hungry. We have enough food in this country. We just, I think, need policy change and the will to see that everyone is fed. And so, yeah, you named some of my experiences. It started with farming. I worked on a farm with Heifer International, which I knew from my church days, where we raised money to buy cows for people in different parts of the world. The World Food Prize Foundation, National Farm to School Network. With the Catholic social workers, I did food rescue. So we would go get food that was being thrown away from stores because it was either, close to expiring or they just didn't have room on the shelves, and we redistributed that. And I think you're right, Michael. It's a really interesting thread of my life, and it's nice to be recognized for it. And it also just feels like my work. Like, this is just what my vocation is. And again, I think it's a shared belief that many people have. I think it's what's interesting to me in the school food space. Anytime there's public polling around, like, should schools feed kids regardless of if their families can pay? It's like a nonpartisan issue. Everyone shares that belief. It's really like the intricate policies and systems change that can get us there. But I think what keeps me going is knowing I think this is a shared belief many people have. We all eat. I think we see how food brings us together, how it helps us find commonality. I think that's a beautiful thread that this group definitely shares here, and that I really believe if we continue to tell stories and encourage people to think through that lens, like, we can really create change for in a sustainable way.
Thank you so much, Anna. I have a friend who teaches 8th grade at Hoyt Middle School, and she can tell you, she teaches language arts, and no kid can, diagram a sentence or talk about nouns and verbs if their stomach is growling. So there's some fundamentals that we have to take care of. On the other end of the spectrum, our next panelist, Bambi Press, works with folks on the other end of the life spectrum. Bambi Press is with the Iowa Department of Health and Human Services. And she works to help older Iowans get the nutritional services they need to be healthy and to thrive. That's one part of her job. Bambi, I want to get this right, because I know there's been some state government restructuring. Will you just help us understand how your office fits into the bigger structure of state government?
Sure, absolutely. And first, I also want to say thank you so much. I am really thrilled to be part of this panel today and to hear about the extraordinary work being done by everyone who's speaking today, and excited to be part of it. But so I'm with the Division of Aging and Disability Services specifically, which is one of 10 divisions within Iowa's Department of Health and Human Services. So this newly created division kind of brings together staff and programs across multiple divisions of Legacy, DHS, and what was formerly the Iowa Department on Aging. And so we're really working to build a coordinated system of supports to promote the independence of aging Iowans and Iowans with disabilities to really be able to live and thrive in their community of choice. And so this network also supports the caregivers who really help to make that happen.
Excellent. I knew you would be able to explain that better than I could. Tell us about, I know your office and your division has lots of different projects, but I want to zero in on the Iowa Cafe program. Will you tell us how that got started and just how it works? Because I think it's a great idea.
I will, certainly. And as much as I would love to take credit for the idea, I also have to kind of send a shout out to Alexandra Bauman, who is also with the Department of Health and Human Services, who really kind of brought this idea to Iowa. But, as we kind of ground ourselves, I think, in how these services get delivered across the state, my role is really supporting 6 area agencies on aging across the state, and all of the nutrition services providers that they work with to deliver over 1.8 million meals a year to older Iowans. And, as we see kind of the aging population and the people who are being served by these programs continue to evolve, we see a need for programs to evolve with it, right? And, we see that anyone 60 and over is eligible to participate in what are called Older Americans Act nutrition services and programs across the state. And, that can look very different, serving a, what we might think of as kind of a younger, older adult versus an older adult. They have very different needs and expectations when it comes to, how people are going to access those services. We saw a tremendous decline, despite everything that, the people on this call know about, increasing need and food insecurity across the state and across the nation. We saw a decreasing participation in congregate nutrition services, not only nationwide, but especially in Iowa. Iowa was one of the worst. And so we took a closer look at, the reasons for that and what were the barriers to people in participating in those programs, and really saw that, in a lot of cases, that kind of traditional model of going to a congregate meal site or a faith center, in the middle of the day doesn't work for everyone and creates barriers for a lot of people for different reasons. And so the Iowa Cafe was the idea that was born out of, working to address those barriers and really meet people where they are in terms of delivering nutrition services. So it's a partnership between those 6 AAAs and local restaurants to provide more choice and flexibility to people in accessing meals that still meet, the specific nutrition guidelines that have been set to meet the nutrition needs of older adults. But people can access services then, on their terms and, eat with whomever they want and choose their own meals and, maybe access meals at, dinner time or, on weekends or breakfast meals, because in a lot of cases, they're still working, or maybe they are caregivers themselves. I mean, they have a lot of demands on their time that maybe older adults didn't have back in 1965 when the Older Americans Act was first drafted.
I know you brought to this job a lot of experience from Meals on Wheels. What were some of the lessons that you applied, or how did that inform your decision on how to shape the Iowa Cafe? Or because it's a very different model, delivering meals individually to homes rather than inviting people to come and share in a group meal. What are some of the big takeaways from your work at Meals on Wheels?
I think that, so I'm a registered dietitian by training, and initially was introduced to that program. I started as a volunteer at my local, senior center, and found out there was a need for someone to help lead the Meals on Wheels program. And it was really that experience, I think, that opened my eyes to the food insecurity that older adults specifically experience, which, often is related to, income and the fact that people are living on, very low and very fixed incomes, but not always. There can be a lot of other reasons, a lot of other contributing factors, transportation, health conditions, lots of other things that go into it. I think working with Meals on Wheels, I had the extraordinary opportunity to see, not only like the broad impact of the programs that, like the ones that we've heard about today, but also, kind of how what you did that day helped one person and made a difference in one person's life. And so that's where really, kind of delivering services with this sort of choice and flexibility, so that people can, access those, like I said, kind of on their own terms. It makes a tremendous difference to one person. And we see this model is kind of a win-win, because not only does it help that one person, it helps the community, it helps the business, that's involved in that partnership. And so, it really has the opportunity to have a really wonderful kind of ripple effect.
Yeah, that's well said. And I think it works on that individual focus, works on several different levels. In the comments, Jenny pointed out that she has known Anna for a long time, and Anna's work in food security, knowing Anna, the individual, has helped Jenny care more about food insecurity. So much of this, we can talk about policy and big statistics and all of that, but so much of this is individual connections. Andy, you brought up the connection of, sitting next to one person at the supper club and making a connection. And that can be very rewarding, and it has ripple effects to sort of, keep helping people. Even if you can't solve the whole thing, you can help a few people, and that they can help a few more. So that can be very promising. It's inspiring. Let's move on to our fourth panelist. Kevin, you are up. Kevin, I'm happy to tell you all, he's probably happy to tell you all that he's recently retired. He's shifting into some new roles, but he served very diligently as the executive director of the Iowa Egg Council and the North Central Poultry Association. And both of those organizations worked together with the chickens, of course, to feed folks in Iowa and way beyond our state's borders. So Kevin, welcome. And just to jump in, tell us a little bit about that Cracking Hunger partnership you set up with the Food Bank of Iowa. Let's start there.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, thank you. And I too am honored to be among the panelists today that are sharing such great stories and information. I think, Michael, you referred to humbleness as being very Iowan. I think caring about our neighbors and wanting to help our neighbors is also this very Iowan, and something that each of these panelists and many, many more people across the state that are engaged in hunger efforts and fighting hunger are certainly contribute to that Iowan appeal. So we, I think it starts really with egg farmers in general, and to some degree, I'm a representative of the entire farming and agricultural community, in that part of the reason that they're in the business is because they care about feeding people, feeding the world, and playing a role in people's lives. And I think they all get energized for that. And I think specifically, maybe in talking about egg farmers today, because we have such a nutritious product, something that is affordable for many people, and can be such a significant tool in alleviating hunger. And, they've been involved in efforts not only in Iowa, but around the world. We have farmers that are engaged in Africa and other countries through their churches and through organizations like Blessman International and others. And, I've been honored to be a part of those efforts as well. But I think specifically to talk to, the Cracking Hunger, our egg farmers have been contributing to food banks for years, but oftentimes those contributions were timed during the holidays or Easter or at other specific occasions. And in 2017 and 2018, we were having conversations with the leaders of some of the food banks here in Iowa, and they were saying that, our issue is that eggs and protein are among the most in demand foods that we have. We need to find more access to proteins. And of course, eggs was at the top of their list to help them deliver, and on a year-round basis. And so in sitting down with them, we said, how can we develop a strategy and a program to ensure that we can provide eggs to those families and people in need on a consistent basis? And so I'm pleased to say that our egg farmers stepped up and they said, we're going to make this happen. And so starting in the fall of 2018 until today, our egg farmers have contributed approximately, or just over 35,000 dozen eggs every month to food banks and food pantries across the state. And that is a big commitment. And I'd like to also shout out that even during COVID, when our egg farmers were going through a lot of stress and challenges on their farms and with their employees, they held true to that commitment and continued to provide those 35,000 dozen. And in fact, during some months during COVID, we're actually able to increase that commitment because, of course, the demand at food banks grew even more. So it's been very excited to be a part of Cracking Hunger. I think the other thing I would just add is that our producers have been enjoyed being a part of the volunteer efforts. So periodically we will engage our boards, our staff. We have an emerging leaders group that we've taken, and we've gone to Food Bank of Iowa. We've gone to Meals for the Heartland and other groups, and actually engaged and had more of a hands-on engagement with feeding the hungry.
Andy, I have a logistical question, and I'm a city slicker, so I don't know how this works. But you only have so many chickens, and chickens can only lay so many eggs. How do you step up production? What does that look like? Is it that the farmers chose to redirect more, like a higher percentage of the eggs to food banks, or how do you make that sustainable in a way that the farmers are still profitable?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think sometimes it's just it starts with planning. Fortunately, we have a lot of chickens in the state of Iowa. We are, for those of you who don't know, we're the #1 egg producing state in the country. And so it was just developing a strategy so that you could develop a stream of eggs that come to these food banks here in the state. It may mean working in partnership with egg producers in other parts of the country to identify the customers that are across nationwide. Our farmers here in Iowa send eggs throughout the country and across the world, especially in North America. And you'll find Iowa eggs in a lot of food products. Like if you have mayonnaise, it's a good chance that the eggs were sourced here in Iowa.
Good to know. I'm gonna do some taste tests and see if I can identify the Iowa eggs in the mayonnaise. Thank you all for telling just a little bit. I know we're just scratching the surface, but it's been interesting to see different facets of how you are all working together. Somebody mentioned the phrase both and. You are all working together to feed people in different ways. So I'm just going to toss out a few questions for the group. Some of the questions that are coming through in the chat, most people are tuning in. There are lots of different reasons people are tuning in today, but there are lots of questions that people want to know how they can help. And I think it can be overwhelming when there are lots of different worthy causes and nonprofits that need volunteers and need funding and support. Just generally, do any of you have suggestions on if people want to get started or if they want to do more, where should they start? There are long lists of resources, but what would you tell people about how to help or how to get started in a way that is meaningful and impactful? Anybody want to take that on? Go ahead, Andy, you're on mute. If you can unmute yourself, we are all ears.
Yes, people can come every night and serve at our supper club, and they can even come in the morning and serve our breakfast club. And we have a unique thing because different organizations, Rotaries, Kiwanis, churches, agencies take a night, and some show up with the entire meal, and some come and just serve the meal while we provide the food. But it's an experience, it's a wonderful experience of community, serving others who are hungry, getting to know them, and just frontline work that perhaps will transform your life as much as it does the people that you serve. We also need food items and produce to give out to people that are pretty food insecure. I think 40% of our families state that they have experienced food insecurity that are part of our program. And another problem is finding a place to shop that is affordable in the neighborhood. So the more that people can donate produce and other items and protein, as Kevin said, the better we can do in reaching out to our neighbors who are hungry.
Thank you. Those are good, very concrete, doable suggestions. Does anybody else want to tackle that question? I know it's wide open. Bambi, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I would just offer, I think something I learned when I was working with Meals on Wheels was that almost everyone I encountered knew someone whose life had been impacted by a Meals on Wheels type program. And so it's one that, is really well known. And I would encourage you, if you're interested, to get connected with your local area agency on aging to find out more about opportunities to volunteer, everything from delivering meals, volunteering at meal sites. Many of these programs also have like friendly caller programs. So even if you don't, have the ability to go out and help deliver meals, you can still help to, address that, social isolation intent that these programs exist to help address. So lots of different opportunities to volunteer, and of course, contribute resources to these programs.
Good to keep in mind. Anna, did you have something? I saw you wave your hand.
I did, and then it said my internet was unstable. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, you're all clear.
Yeah, a few things I would add. As Andy said, I think I may be frozen again.
We can hear you. We can't see you, but I can hear your voice. Now you're back.
I would encourage you in your own neighborhoods to look out for like little free food pantries, or the Des Moines Public Library system has food pantries. There are places where you can easily bring food that is easily accessible for people to take food when they're hungry and they need it. And I think that's a really easy, accessible. I like to think that the easiest way to get started is the one that's going to be the lowest lift for you, the lowest barrier of entry to doing. And so keep an eye out to the places that you visit and that you frequent often, and where there may be spaces to share food there. And then the other piece I'll just name is around policy, to not forget that your vote and your conversations with lawmakers make a difference. And so if your policymakers are hearing from you that hunger in our community is an issue you care about, and that you want them as your representative to focus on, that is also a valid place to get started in addressing systemic hunger in our communities.
Good point. There's some interesting chatter coming in on the chat. We have a student from the UK, hello Farouz, who's an ambassador for the Borgen Project. There's a link to learn more about the Borgen Project there. And Jamie has mentioned some good, a good tip that ties into the little food libraries, or the little food, I don't know the right term, but kitchens or pantries. I know in the Des Moines Public Library system, there are places to leave food if you have it, or take food if you need it. It sounds like there's something similar in Council Bluffs. And Jamie raises the good point that that for teens, teens sometimes don't use food pantries, and teen homelessness looks very different. So there's some different challenges there. So there's no shortage of ways that people can help, and there's no shortage of need. For all of you, for the panelists, I'm curious to know, all of you have been working in these areas for years. What are some of the biggest changes that you've seen in the last years, especially since the pandemic? And what, I guess when you peer into your crystal ball, what are some of the challenges that you see ahead? And what does the forecast look like in the next few years? What are the things that kind of keep you up at night or worry you, or you see opportunities in the years ahead? Again, I know I'm tossing out great big questions out of the blue, but if so let's break it down. How have your jobs changed the most in the past, I would say in the years since the pandemic?
Well,
are the challenges different, or are you facing different kinds of headwinds, or you've had successes, Andy?
Well, for a while, we had to be in LA anyway. We had to become both a rescue mission, shelter, and hospital. We had to start giving out meals to go rather than inviting everybody in. And fortunately, when I came to CFM, we were still giving out meals to go, but we've reintroduced that community that we experienced of inviting everybody in, enjoying a supper or breakfast. And as was said earlier, food is really needed, but it's also produces community. And I have friends who say that people don't quit addictions, they join a community. And I know this is making it kind of simple, but also housing and food don't necessarily end hunger and homelessness, but community does. So community is so important. And this is probably we could be just my theory, but many years ago I did an interview survey for Iowa State, and I interviewed I think 300 people who were homeless around Iowa, and the one common denominator, 93% of the people who were on the street back then said that they had no contact with their family at all. Either their family disintegrated when they were young, or they'd burned every bridge with their family. And who knows who burned what bridge, but that's the biggest common denominator among people who are homeless. And unfortunately, this is the tough part of my projections, but unfortunately, families are disintegrating more than I've ever seen them disintegrate, and more people are experiencing homelessness than ever, especially in Des Moines. And in LA, it's incomprehensible how big the problem is. But places to eat bring back a new kind of family, a new kind of community that produces the connections needed to escape homelessness, to escape hunger. So more than ever, we're going to need places that care about people, not only feeding them, but inviting them into a lasting community of unconditional love.
That's a great point, Andy. So much of this is interconnected.
Michael,
Does anybody else want to? Yeah, go
I
ahead,
would
Kevin.
just add that something that's concerning that I've seen as a change is what we're finding that people are eating, as economics have forced them to eat less healthy foods that are still filling their stomachs, but that's led to a rise in obesity. But these people are overfed and undernourished, and so I think that's a concern that I have is, how do we continue to find ways to provide the foods, but the foods that they should be eating as part of a healthy, nutritious diet? And I think that's a challenge for all of us to tackle.
We at Business Publications Corporation, many of our readers are business leaders or policymakers. And Bambi or Anna, you mentioned this. Sometimes it's fair game to ask political candidates, what's your position on this, on X or Y or Z? Are there things that you would like business leaders or policymakers to know about some of these issues, or for regular old civilians like me, are there questions that we should be pressing our leaders about? Are there ways that the movers and shakers, how should movers and shakers in the community think about addressing food insecurity? I know I'm tossing out huge, big questions that are very complicated, but if you want to take a stab at it, go ahead.
I can take a stab at it. And again, I work in the school food space, and I'm going to go off camera because I see I'm unstable again. I'm so sorry. I work in the school food space, and to answer the previous question too, since the pandemic, we both saw a huge increase in the number of students and families who needed support of school meals. And also we saw that schools have really great infrastructure to provide that support for kids and families. And I would encourage, I think, business leaders and policymakers to really consider that 30 million kids eat lunch at school every single day, and they are our future. And I think you made this point earlier, Michael, like we, by supporting these kids, we are supporting our communities and our future too. Kids learn better when they're not hungry. Kids grow into young adults who have passions and want to be a part of their community in productive and beautiful ways. But they can't do that if they're undernourished, and they can't do that if they're hungry, and if their most basic human needs are not being met. And our schools are the infrastructure we have in our communities to be able to provide that. They're set up for it, and they just need the support for that. And so I think as citizens, as business leaders, as policymakers, to know where we want to put our investment, the investment of our tax dollars into our community, I think school meals and FoodCorps thinks school meals should continue to be one of those places. So just remembering, I think little kids grow up into big adults, and nourishment is what helps them get there.
point. Anybody else want to take a turn on that one?
Yeah, if I could just add, Michael, I think we saw, just like many other food assistance programs, saw this tremendous expansion, in part related to the availability of some additional, pandemic relief sort of funding over the last few years. And, as we start to see those funding levels return to normal in some cases, or a new normal probably in a lot of cases, we see that looks very different. And a lot of those programs are being forced to contract or kind of right size their services based on their capacity. But, to everyone's point on this call, we see, that need just continues to increase, right? And so we see that the availability of some of that public funding, really isn't going to keep pace with the, with the need. And so, we see, for example, the area agencies on aging across the state really working hard to prioritize, those consumers of the greatest social need and the greatest economic need, for services. But unfortunately, that does mean, that there are some waiting lists. And so that's something, for people to, I think, be aware of, broadly across the state, because it's not something that we've seen a lot of in Iowa, or, waiting lists for aging nutrition services. Like I said, we're kind of at this inflection point where, these programs are innovating, and the pandemic really kind of helped them accelerate, that need to innovate during the pandemic. And so, I think we'll continue to see that momentum. We'll continue to see things change. Kind of to Kevin's point, I think we've also seen, started to see this shift just from talking about food insecurity to talking about nutrition security, right? And so it's the difference between, just providing food and providing the right people with the right food. So, as we see, more complex health conditions, especially among our adults and older adults, as we see, people who are just more nutrition savvy, and understand what the right foods are. As we see our populations continue to become, more and more diverse, there's a need to, adapt the services and programs that are provided to help meet those, again, those really specific and kind of person-centered needs.
Sometimes there were so many examples during the pandemic where there were greater needs and bigger challenges, but also people figured out ways to adapt or innovate in ways that we still benefit from. I mean, even this Zoom call, 5 years ago, this would have been really like hard to figure out, but now we're all Zoom experts. So sometimes the toughest times force us to figure out new and better ways to do things. There was so much innovation and to meet the need that hit during the pandemic. I want to give you all one last chance to give some parting thoughts. So while you collect your thoughts and just give us a few takeaways, I want to walk our viewers through this new issue of Iowa Stops Hunger. This is an annual publication that we publish that covers all kinds of topics and stories about food security in Iowa. And I just want to spotlight a couple stories in this printed publication. That it's online, but you can also pick up a printed copy. As I mentioned earlier, my associate editor, Haley Evans, she guided the coverage on this, and it's a really great issue full of good stories, including profiles of the 4 panelists here today. So if you heard good ideas from them and want to know more about their organizations, you can learn more in this publication. This always reminds me a little bit of Reading Rainbow, where LeVar Burton held up a book and said, "You should read this book, but you don't have to take my word for it." Anyway, in this new issue, there are some really great stories, and I just want to highlight a few of them. There's one, the headline is "Hungry for Innovation," which drills down into 2 really interesting case studies of innovation in food insecurity. One takes a look at the hydroponics garden, or the hydroponic farms at the Wesley Life Meals on Wheels headquarters in Drake University's old College of Education. So it looks at the science and how they grow all kinds of leafy greens inside. There's also a look at Iowa State researchers are doing all kinds of research and developing new techniques to help farmers in developing countries preserve grain after the harvest. So they're trying to minimize spoilage. which can make a huge difference in terms of making sure that the yields get to the people who need them and don't get lost along the way. There's another great story. It takes a team to feed a village, which gives us a good update on the latest partnership and the latest citywide plan to address food insecurity in central Iowa with partners from the Food Bank of Iowa and Des Moines Area Religious Council and some other stakeholders who got together and put together a plan to work together a little bit better moving forward. So that's a good update for a story that has been evolving over the last couple of years. There's another interesting story called Small Towns, Big Challenges about how Iowans, it kind of takes a look at how statewide organizations are working with local food pantries in small towns to address some of the challenges that are kind of specific to small towns that don't have huge population centers and are addressing food insecurity in very specific locally based ways. So I encourage you to pick up a copy. This is what it looks like. I can hold it up here. And it really is full of interesting stories that offer some solutions and I hope inspire readers to take some action. There's also a list of resources for people who need help and also people who can provide help. So in the back, if you want to get involved, there's a great list of resources to start making a difference in your neighborhood or your town or your state. So why don't we go in the same order, and I'll just give you a chance just to give us a takeaway, sort of a fortune cookie fortune, or a little thought to send us off before Chris wraps it up. So let's go in the same order. Andy, take us away.
All right, thanks so much. You mentioned teamwork and partnerships, and I would like to thank the Food Bank of Iowa and DMARC, who've been great partners, largely because of a wonderful, we recruited a volunteer kind of food czar to rescue food who had significant experience in the Washington, D.C. area doing this very thing. Jack Bell is now a board member of CFAM, and he not only rallied Hy-Vee to do a big back-to-school barbecue the other day, but he shows up on Friday mornings and feeds the kids breakfast, and he's just been a great resource of helping us make it all happen. So just a shout out to teammates who have made a difference. We also have 2 neighborhood cooks who show up, serve at the breakfast club, and then serve at the supper club, and know what the kids like and know what people in our neighborhood need. So it's a great to have a great team, and hopefully we can all become a great team to make sure no child goes to bed hungry at night, no person in Des Moines goes hungry, no person in Iowa goes hungry.
Thank you, Andy. Anna, go ahead.
Yeah, as my parting thought, I want to lift up one other way that school meals are great for communities, not just for kids. And that example is through farm to school. And the number of school districts that are starting to work with local farmers to bring local food into their school meals, which not only is good for those farmers to have a local buyer, school districts buy at really big volumes, and they see that return on their investment. It's good for kids and exciting for them to know where their farmers come from. And it's great for communities to keep those dollars local. That's another initiative that happens through school meals that is great for kids, great for farmers, great for communities, keeps kids fed, communities fed. It's a win for all of us, and another initiative that I think really deserves more attention in this food space.
Thank you, Anna. Bambi, your turn.
Yeah, I think I'd actually like to kind of circle back to where we started, and the work that is being done both by the Division of Aging Disability Services and all of those Aging Disability Resource Center partners and area agencies on aging across the state, because food insecurity doesn't exist in a vacuum. And so when we look at food as or nutrition services as kind of a welcome mat to help people access all of the other kind of wraparound services and supports that are really going to help people, live and thrive in our communities. Food is really just a starting point. And I would also like to mention that, the nutrition services that I've talked about here today are not, while they're targeted to people who may be living with food insecurity,
Oh, hang on.
limited.
I think Bambi froze. Oh.
Can you hear me now?
She didn't freeze for me.
Okay, so they're not limited to people who may be living with food insecurity. Anyone 60 and over is eligible to participate, and they're contribution-based services, so people can contribute whatever they're able. So when people who can contribute something are also participating in these programs, it really helps to expand the capacity of those programs to be able to provide services to more people in need. So that's something to keep in mind.
It looks like Michael was the one that froze, so I'm going to step in and close this out with the last couple of takeaways. So I know we have a couple folks that still have takeaways, so I want to make sure to get those in. Who do we still need?
I think it's just me.
All right, Kevin, wrap us up.
Yeah, I guess the only thing I would say is for those of you that are doing great work out there, and there are so many that could benefit from additional resources and partners, to reach out to folks. I think a lot of people today that are in marketing and moving, trying to develop a PR program and learning that engagement with groups, volunteer groups, groups that are feeding hungry, things like that, would benefit from tying their marketing programs into that. I use myself as an example. We had Cracking Hunger for a number of years. And it wasn't until just a couple of years ago that we thought, wow, we should be tying all of these efforts into what we're doing to promote eggs and market eggs. And so in our partnerships that we have with the University of Iowa and Iowa State football programs and other people across the state, we've said, let's tie in, let's make it all part of our Cracking Hunger, Feeding the Hungry initiatives. And so we've married those initiatives to make them both stronger. And I would just, throw out that if you're someone that's engaged, I saw a number of posts come through the chat of, we need help, we need more resources. Reach out to people in your community and talk about how it could be tied into their marketing and public relations efforts to be a partner with you and to take advantage of some of the resources that exist in your local communities. I think that's a real opportunity, and I, would encourage more and more folks to look at those opportunities.
I want to give Michael a chance now that he's back to give his closing final thought, just so that we don't feel bad about you being frozen there for a second.
Yeah. Thank you all. And Kevin, your last point about marketing and just spreading the word and sharing these stories, that's where DSM and the business record come in. We can't produce eggs, and we don't raise crops, and we don't work in food pantries directly, but we are very interested in sharing your stories. And so much of combating food insecurity is about spreading the word and connecting people with the resources and all of that. So we are very proud to serve that role and just get these stories out there. So for all viewers, everybody who's tuning in, if you have ideas or you think, if you have ideas for stories, all of that, send it our way. And we're always looking for other stories to just help spread the word about the good work that so many people are doing for a really, really important cause. So I thank you all for carving out a little time. The panelists especially, thank you so much for, first of all, for doing the work you do every single day. And second, for carving out a little bit of time to bring us up to speed. So Chris, over to you.
Yes, and Michael said it great. Thank you to all of our panelists for being here today. Our role in helping fight hunger is to help make sure not just that we're doing it once a year and talking about it, but we've really tried to infuse this within all our products. So each month in the business record, there's a story about Iowa Stops Hunger. In every edition of DSM magazine, there is the website, the publication we've talked about, today's event. The goal is to help make sure that this is present in front of folks so that there are ways. We know there's not one silver, one specific way that we're going to solve this. It's going to take a lot of folks working on the problem from a variety of different directions. That's our goal, is to help make sure that we're keeping it present in front of folks so that the people that have the capacity and the ability to make a difference and a change can go ahead and do that. And so we want to invite you, of course, to help participate in Iowa Stops Hunger. If you or your organization, again, have stories or you'd like to participate as a supporter of the program, please feel free to reach out our way. You can reach out to Lynn Belknap at bpcdm.com. Also, we've got a number of other things that you can stay involved with as well with the business record. So a couple things coming up: our LGBTQ awards on September 12th. It's on September 19th. We've got our Envision Iowa think tank. We're going to be talking about infrastructure, which infuses with some of the discussion that we've had today. 90 ideas in 90 minutes, an opportunity to be really inspired. That's on September 26th. Our Fearless Focus on October 3rd. And then we'll have an Envision Iowa main event on October 22nd. We hope to see you at those in the future. Again, I want to thank our speakers, not just for participating today, but for the important work that each of you are doing. Our role in helping lift that up just a little bit. Hopefully we helped inspired somebody today, an organization or an individual, to take just at least one step towards action. That's what our job is to help do. And I hope that we can say that we accomplished that in some fashion. And hopefully maybe we'll see some of those ideas come to fruition and be the things that Michael and his team are writing about in the future. Again, thank you to our presenting sponsor, Hy-Vee, and to Mom's Meals. You truly are amazing partners to work with. We couldn't do something like this without your support helping back it. So we thank you for taking that leap with us and helping create this program. And last but not least, thanks to each of you who joined today. I hope you came away with some good information and ideas that can help you take some steps towards helping us end hunger. My name is Chris Konetsky, and if I or our team can ever be of any help to you or your organization or community, please don't hesitate to reach out. We'll make sure to get you in touch with the right person. Thank you again, and have a great afternoon.